became a career firefighter with the Howard County Department of Fire and Rescue Service, the chief of the medical division, or EMS, the unofficial historian of the Howard County Department of Fire and Rescue Services. Over 65,000 digital images and newspaper articles, magazine articles, etc. Episode 24-25, Ellicott City Streetcars. We're switching gears somewhat. This particular podcast is going to be discussing today the history of the Ellicott City Streetcars. Streetcar lines were laid from the junction in Catonsville to Ellicott City back in 1898, where the first streetcars were able to make their way from Catonsville and into Howard County. As we look at a series of pictures here, this first picture shows in 1939 a young girl standing underneath the streetcar tracks just off of Frederick Road. In fact, the little girl is probably staring at what is now the Trolley Stop restaurant, or the Valley View restaurant back in the day. Also of interest is behind the young girl, you can see those apartments that are lined up right there. That is now the parking lot that we use for going to the Trolley Stop or to hike up and down the river, or to hike over into Ellicott City. So where the parking lot is now, row houses, townhouses, back in the day. Just an image showing Lower Main Street near Tiber Alley, the streetcar tracks coming down Main Street. One of the hazards back then of this particular time frame of 1939 is cars were getting bigger, and there is a white line that marks where the cars cannot park over that white line, because the car would then be in danger of being struck by the streetcar, which in reality did happen with some frequency. Just looking at Main Street from the railroad bridge, looking up Main Street, you can see the streetcar tracks going up Main Street and coming down Main Street. This has to be around 1900, only because there doesn't appear to be any vehicle traffic. A couple things of note: where the Phoenix Emporium restaurant is there on the corner of Maryland Avenue and Main Street. At that time, it was a single-story structure. There was some sort of shelter in the lower left-hand corner. There was some sort of shelter for folks getting ready to get on the streetcar. That obviously is no longer there. And on the right-hand side, the wooden structure are the remnants of the Ellicott City Hotel, which is right adjacent to the railroad tracks on Lower Main Street. But you can see the streetcar tracks going up and down Main Street back in the day. Again, just another picture showing Lower Main Street at Maryland Avenue, streetcar coming down the street. You can see what was the Phoenix Emporium, which at the time this picture was taken was actually Valmus's restaurant. And you can see in this picture, the second story had been placed on the restaurant itself, so it's now a two-story building. You can see the car in the lower right-hand corner. I hope he's just stopping, because he is clearly on the tracks, which would have impeded another streetcar from getting up Main Street. Apparently, in 1922, there was a push to repave Main Street, and in doing that, they had to take up the old macadam and then eventually put down new macadam or cement to create the new roadbed. And as you can see, they stripped the old macadam, cobblestone, or whatever it may be, and they're getting ready to repave that area. Must have been interesting for vehicles to go up and down Main Street at that time. Just an image showing the streetcar passing underneath the railroad bridge. This should have been around 1950 or so. Passing underneath the railroad bridge, heading back over towards the Patapsco River, over the bridge and into Baltimore County, and ultimately over to the junction in Catonsville. Again, just an image of the streetcar coming up Main Street. You can see the flagpole in the back where the post office is or was, and this streetcar is heading up Main Street. Streetcars were not exempt from fender benders, and this is an oops back in 1906, where somehow or other the trolley derailed and slid sideways and took out a telephone pole, and obviously blocked traffic for a period of time. I don't believe that anyone was hurt, but it certainly made for an interesting time. It also looks on the above left that the hotel, Ellicott City Hotel, is still there, with balconies, etc. This particular image is just showing the terminus, the end of the line coming from Catonsville into Ellicott City. The end of the line is actually the parking lot for the Ellicott City Volunteer Fire Department. The actual fire station is just out of the picture on the right-hand side. So the streetcars would come up Main Street, turn into what would become the parking lot of the Ellicott City Fire Department. Would pull in there, they would change direction. Car itself could be driven from the front and the back, and all they had to do was move the pole that made contact with the electric line overhead and then start moving again. The shed right there is a shelter for individuals who are going to catch the streetcar. And as I said, this was right adjacent to the Ellicott City Volunteer Fire Department. Again, just another photo showing the lower Main Street and the streetcar coming down the Main Street. You can see as the streetcar is passing, it's not missing those cars by much. In the latter years before 1955, which was the year that the streetcar went out of service, cars that were parked and were becoming larger were frequently struck or would hold up the streetcar as they tried to search for the driver to move the vehicle. And again, this image is taken at Maryland Avenue and Main Street. Just another image of lower Main Street and streetcar activity. This particular image is just showing the streetcar coming up Main Street, and actually it is getting ready to make the turn into the parking lot adjacent to the fire station. The fire station is just to the left about where that young lady is. And the streetcar had to sort of change tracks to make the turn and to be able to make it into the Ellicott City Fire Department parking lot. For years, especially when I worked down in Ellicott City, you could still see some of the tracks in the parking lot that were still existed. They've been covered by asphalt or whatever, but there are spots where you could still see the streetcar tracks. An image showing actually, again, the fire station, Ellicott City Fire Station, a shelter for individuals who are going to be riding the streetcar, and a streetcar that is parked, repositioning itself, and getting ready to take on passengers and make the return trip back to Baltimore County. Again, just the paving of lower Main Street. This image is of 1930, around 1930, just showing a streetcar, trolley car, crossing the Patapsco River on the bridge. You can see the new Main Street bridge for vehicles at the bottom with the trolley tracks and bridge at the top. The building to the left at the end of the tracks for years had been the location of Edward T. Clark's hardware store, and with the coal bins behind the store and other materials that were sold at the time. It went from E.T. Clark's hardware store to Appalachian Outfitters and several other businesses over the years. Again, same picture, just a little clearer, showing the streetcar bridge and the E.T. Clark's. If you look hard, just underneath the bridge, streetcar bridge going diagonal, was a low-level dam that actually was in use to provide water into a channel that went to the mill, the donut mill, that operated the equipment, the water-powered equipment. And that was a low-level dam that diverted some water down a channel and into the mill itself. I remember that the particular dam that was still in existence until Hurricane Agnes took it out. Again, just another picture looking at Main Street and the trolley lines. Again, a picture just showing the terminus by the fire station. You can just barely see the fire station on the right-hand side, shelter for streetcar passengers. And again, one of the streetcars that is just getting ready to reposition itself, take on passengers, and head on back to Baltimore County. Again, sort of the same image. The operator is transferring the power pole from the back, in this situation, from the back of the car and raising the power pole on the other end of the car so that they can make their way back to Baltimore County. This image around 1930 is just showing the streetcar getting ready to pass over the streetcar bridge over the Patapsco River. It was a one-lane travel. Only one streetcar could pass at a time. If you look to the far side of the bridge, on the left, you can see the apartments that I was talking about earlier that were built to house individuals, and that eventually they were torn down, and that became the parking lot of today that people use to go to the Trolley Stop restaurant or walk into Ellicott City. The building to the right-hand side is what is now the Trolley Stop restaurant, had been the Valley View or Bloody Bucket, as was known back in the day, restaurant, bar, and lounge. You can also see on the left-hand side, you can see the low-level dam, water cascading over top of it as some of the water is being diverted down a sluice that would end up going to the mill itself to power some of the equipment that you were using. And again, just a better picture of the area, the apartments, the trolley stop restaurant, the streetcar, and the low-level dam. Just an image showing the bridge and trolley during a wintertime scene traversing over the river. Again, a couple of young ladies waiting for the trolley to pass by before I guess they were going to do some shopping, etc. Again, the wintertime scene with the trolley getting ready to pass over the river. It looks like on the right-hand side, there's some stone structures, which I am making the assumption were the pillars for the covered bridge that had been there for years that took horses and some vehicle traffic over it. So I'm making the assumption on the right-hand side, those stoneworks, pillars, were probably what was used by the covered bridge back in the day. Just again, another image of Lower Main Street with the trolley. An image of, again, the trolley bridge. To the right is what was left of the wooden bridge that crossed from Howard County into Baltimore County. The bridge itself, the wooden bridge burned around 1915, created a significant inconvenience for travelers. They'd have to travel many, many miles from Ellicott City to get around into Baltimore County. Probably take 10, 15 miles or whatever for folks to be able to just get to the other side of the bridge there. Again, just an image of the streetcar bridge over Oella Avenue with what is now the trolley stop restaurant to the right, and it may have been the Valley View back in the day. Please use your remaining heartbeats wisely and not waste a single precious one.